Archaeologists expect pottery, foundations, fragments of tools left behind by people who stopped needing them. They do not expect to open a grave and find a body assembled from 3 different human beings. They do not expect skulls mounted on stakes, or a scream frozen for 3,000 years. Number 12. The Windover Bog People. 91 human brains preserved inside their skulls for 8,000 years. A backhoe operator near Titusville, Florida, struck bones in a peat pond in 1982. Police assumed a crime scene. Radiocarbon dating returned 8,000 years. Archaeologists recovered 168 bodies. The pond's anaerobic water had protected everything: bone, wooden tools, woven textiles, among the oldest in the Western Hemisphere, and brain tissue, retaining visible cell structure. The community had cared for individuals with spina bifida and congenital deformities across long lifespans. One adolescent who could not walk survived to 15, fed, carried, kept alive by people who gained nothing practical from doing so. They used the same pond for 1,000 years, then vanished entirely. No descendants, no oral tradition. The water preserved their bodies. It did not preserve their reasons. Number 11. Shanidar Cave. Someone kept a crippled Neanderthal alive for decades. Then someone else killed a different one with a spear. Shanidar 1 was blind in one eye, missing his right arm, and walked with a permanent limp. One of 10 Neanderthals excavated from a cave in Iraq's Zagros Mountains starting in 1957. His injuries would have been fatal without sustained care. Shanidar 4, buried roughly 50,000 years ago, had pollen from 8 flowering species around his body: yarrow, cornflower, grape hyacinth. The implication that Neanderthals mourned their dead with flowers transformed an entire field. Then there was Shanidar 3, a spear wound between his ribs, angled from the front. He survived weeks before dying. His community brought him back to the cave to die among his people, the same species that had also produced whoever threw the spear. Number 10. The triple burial of Dolní Věstonice. 3 teenagers in the same grave, 27,000 years old, red ochre around their skulls, and between the legs of the one in the middle. Near the Czech village of Dolní Věstonice in 1986, excavators uncovered 3 skeletons side by side. The center individual had a deformed spine and shortened leg. The skeleton on the right had one hand placed on the center figure's pelvis. The one on the left had its skull crushed at the time of burial. For decades, researchers assumed the center figure was female. DNA analysis in 2016 proved all 3 were male. Brothers. Every prior theory collapsed overnight. Not a fertility rite, not a love triangle. 3 brothers, one disabled, one touching another, one executed alongside them. The red pigment, the positioning, the violence, all deliberate, all unexplained. Number 9. The sunken skulls of Motala. A wooden stake driven through the base of a human skull, pushed upward until it emerged from the crown. In 2011, archaeologists building a railway in Motala, Sweden, excavated a dried lakebed and found 11 individuals deposited on a stone platform, roughly 8,000 years ago. Every adult skull was missing its jaw. 2 still had stakes lodged inside them. Animal bones sorted by species were arranged around the skulls. Inside one woman's cranium sat a fragment of another woman's skull, deliberately placed. The bodies had been buried first, exhumed, the heads removed and mounted. These were not enemies. These were their own dead, processed through a ritual that left no explanation behind. Number 8. The Sunghir Children. Someone spent 10,000 hours carving ivory beads for 2 children who could not have earned them. Near Vladimir, Russia, excavators in 1969 uncovered a boy of 12 and a girl of 9, buried head-to-head in a grave dating back 34,000 years. Mammoth ivory beads covered their bodies, each requiring an hour of skilled labor. Spears carved from straightened mammoth tusks. The girl's femurs were severely bowed from skeletal disease. She could not walk, could not hunt, could not migrate. Her community buried her with more wealth than any comparable Paleolithic site has ever produced. They dressed her the same as the boy beside her, gave her the same spears she could never have thrown. Whatever these children meant to the people who buried them, it was enough to stop an entire community's work for years. Number 7. Tollund Man and the Bog Bodies. 2 brothers cutting peat in 1950 found a face so preserved they called police to report a murder. The victim had been dead 2,400 years. Tollund Man lay in a Danish bog with a leather noose knotted around his neck, skin darkened to leather, eyes closed. Someone had arranged him after death, placed him in the fetal position, smoothed his expression, closed his eyes. His last meal was a porridge of barley, flax, and seeds. Plants gathered specifically, not eaten normally. A ritual meal before a ritual death. Across northern Europe, hundreds of similar bodies have surfaced. Graubaul Man's throat was cut ear to ear. Lindo Man was struck, garroted, and had his throat slashed. 3 methods for one person. Tollund Man's face is not the face of someone taken by force. It is the face of someone who walked to the bog on his own. Number 6. The Lord of Sipán. The first thing Alva noticed was the guardian. Both feet had been surgically removed. In 1987, Peruvian police had called archaeologist Walter Alva because a looter was killed raiding a Moche pyramid, and gold artifacts were flooding the black market. Alva's emergency excavation cut into the pyramid before the site could be destroyed. Inside lay a warrior priest buried 1700 years ago. Gold headdress, ceremonial weapons, beaded chest armor. Around him, 8 bodies arranged in a circle. A woman, 2 warriors, a child, a dog, 2 llamas, and the footless guardian positioned at the entrance. Every companion had been killed at the moment of burial, but the guardian's amputation was older. Healed bones showed he had lived without feet for years before his death. He had served the Lord in life, fed him, guarded him, followed him as far as a man without feet could follow. And when the Lord died, they placed the guardian at the door of the tomb so he could continue the only duty he had ever been allowed. The Moche pottery found nearby, once considered decorative art, turned out to be documentation, depicting the exact rituals this man had performed while alive. Number 5. The Nataruk Massacre. A woman in the last stage of pregnancy, hands and feet bound, face down in the mud of a Kenyan lagoon. In 2012, researchers from Cambridge found 27 people at Nataruk, west of Lake Turkana, 10,000 years old. Women, children, men. Skulls crushed by clubs. Obsidian blades still embedded in bone. No one had buried them. They had been left at the water's edge for 10 millennia. Hunter-gatherers were not supposed to wage organized war. No territory to defend. No stored surplus to raid. Nataruk is the earliest clear evidence that they did. The children were found in the positions they had died in, curled against their mothers, who could not protect them. And the tombs only get worse from here. Number 4. The Herxheim Bone Pit. The first bones looked like a massacre. Then, archaeologists found the cooking marks. Herxheim was a farming village in southwestern Germany, 7,000 years old. Crops, livestock, no shortage of food. The enclosure ditches held the shattered remains of over 1,000 people. Then, the details surfaced. Skulls hollowed into bowls, long bones split for marrow, scraping patterns identical to butchered livestock, roasting damage. And the tooth enamel told the worst part. The victims were not local. Isotope analysis traced origins hundreds of kilometers in every direction. People had been brought to Herxheim. Some researchers still argue ritual defleshing without consumption. Others say the marrow extraction ends that debate. Either way, a Neolithic farming community transported people from across the continent, processed their bodies like livestock, and continued for decades. Number 3. The Screaming Mummy. Her mouth was still open, hands and feet bound, wrapped in sheepskin instead of royal linen. In Egyptian burial practice, sheepskin meant one thing: the afterlife was being denied. Unknown woman A was found in 1881, among royal mummies in a cache near Luxor. No organ removal, no fine wrappings. CT scans published in 2024 identified cadaveric spasm, extreme distress locking muscles at the instant of death. Her face froze mid-scream because she was screaming when she died, and the trauma was severe enough that the embalmers could not close her mouth. They bound her limbs, wrapped her in ritually unclean skin, and placed her in the cache among the kings of Egypt, not as an equal, as a warning. Number 2. The Clad Holland Mummies. The DNA came back wrong. The torso, skull, and jaw belonged to 3 different men who had died centuries apart. In 2001, archaeologists on Scotland's South Uist found 4 bodies beneath Bronze Age roundhouse foundations, roughly 3,000 years old. The corpses had been submerged in peat bogs after death, preserved for months, then kept above ground for generations. Then DNA analysis arrived in 2012. The male skeleton was assembled from 3 individuals separated by 300 to 600 years. The female combined parts from at least 3 people, including a male skull fitted onto a female body. These were not preserved ancestors. They were built, composite figures constructed from people who had never been alive at the same time, held together and displayed for centuries before being sealed beneath the floors of occupied homes. 3,000 years later, a DNA test revealed what no one looking at them could have seen. Number 1. The Ice Maiden of Ukok, 8,000 feet above sea level. The junction of 4 countries. A plateau the indigenous population considers sacred. A tomb sealed by permafrost for 2,500 years. In 1993, archaeologist Natalia Polosmak opened a frozen burial chamber on Siberia's Ukok Plateau and found a young woman of the Pazyryk culture, alongside 6 sacrificed horses. Ice had preserved everything: skin, hair, organs, and tattoos of extraordinary complexity. A deer with a griffin's beak, antlers ending in flowers, punctured into her skin with soot during her lifetime. CT scans revealed she had died at 25 from breast cancer that had spread through her body. She had spent her final months managing pain with cannabis. Her community dressed her in silk, placed her in a timber-lined chamber, and buried 6 horses to carry her forward. The indigenous Altai people had opposed the excavation from the start. After her remains were transported to Novosibirsk, earthquakes struck the region. Floods followed. A plane crashed, killing everyone aboard. Local leaders said they had warned this would happen. In 2012, the Ice Maiden was returned to the Republic of Altai and placed in a sealed mausoleum. She lies there now behind glass. The tattoos are still visible. The flowers still bloom from the antlers on her shoulder. The Pazyryk who buried her have been gone for over 2,000 years, but the tomb they built still commands the kind of fear that makes governments return what they took. It has been opened twice. It will not be opened again.